Frequently, people ask me if they should view their house as a long-term rental or a short-term rental. And quite frankly, there's no easy answer to that. The very first thing you have to look into, if you're going to consider short-term rental, and some long-term rentals too, you need to make sure what are the rules for your individual neighborhood, your county, your city, your state. You want to make sure. You also want to talk to your accountant to make sure what the financial benefits and ramifications could be. Um, and make sure sometimes certain areas will not allow short-term rentals. Especially you get down to Smith Mountain Lake, there's certain neighborhoods that don't allow it, and certain neighborhoods, in Bedford County don't allow it either. So you want to be positive it's allowed because obviously you don't want to go against the rules and regulations. You'll find the same thing in Richmond and other areas too. Uh, Sometimes you can't even do long-term rentals. There's certain communities where you have to live in the house for a year or two before you can do a rental on it. I know that sounds kind of weird, but that's just the rules that they make on it. So you want to make sure what your rules and regulations are either before you buy the property or before you decide to convert it into a rental property. After that point, you have a lot of things to consider. Are you going to be close to the property? Or are you going to hire a manager? Again, already mentioned tax implications, but if you're going to do a short-term rental, who's going to take care of the taxes for you? Who's going to pay the taxes for you? Long-term rental, how does it affect your taxes at the end of the year? Do you put it into a company or an LLC as opposed to a private organization? That's something to think about what you want to do there. The other thing to consider is income. So now short-term rentals theoretically it generates a little bit more income, but the problem is it's not consistent. You can hope to have consistent amount of people stay, and the money would be better, but it can be inconsistent. You can have some busy months, you can have some slow months. Sometimes you go a whole month without anybody. The other thing you have to consider is furnishing the property and maintaining of the property. So not only do you have to have all the appliances in there, but you do have to put beds and sofas and couches and chairs and dining room tables and dishes and silverware. And then sometimes, I hate to say it, sometimes strange things disappear. So you want to keep an inventory of everything so you can make sure that, one of your cup sets doesn't disappear. But then, accidents happen. People drop a cup, drop a plate or something like that. These things happen. And so you want to make sure you can have that replaced. Um, you theoretically can bill the tenant for that, but it gets kind of hard sometimes. You might make sure you have adequate bedding. The maintenance of the property becomes also a concern. Either way, whether you're doing long term or short term. So for short term rental, one of my biggest challenges is making sure that the property is ready between guests. So if you have a guest checking out one day and somebody new checking in the same day, then unlike a hotel can say, well, this room here isn't ready, so we'll put this person in that room instead, while this room's being finished up. At an Airbnb, you have that time, that 4 hour window, whatever time you set up, that your property has to be ready, it has to be done. So there's ways to address that and to kind of prepare for that. You want to make sure that you think through these things, especially if you have a small cleaning crew and if you end up with multiple properties, they can't do multiple properties on the same day in the 4 hour windows. It's kind of difficult. So you almost like you have to get a different person for each property, or have a different person available for each property, which that makes it a little bit more difficult. Now, tenant screening for long-term rental, tenant screening is really important and kind of somewhat important for a short-term rental too. The different companies that generally go through for short-term rentals, you can work with them. So one of the companies provides insurance, but again, the insurance isn't the greatest. I don't know if I mentioned that. It's not the greatest, and it's a little difficult to get. The other one doesn't automatically provide insurance. What you have to do is require that the tenants pay insurance or get an insurance policy so that you're covered in case they damage something. I dropped one company because they basically they don't allow you to do insurance. They don't do insurance and allow you to do insurance. They basically said that if there's physical damage to the property, they will email the person and request that they pay you, but they're not going to assist you in recouping the money. They're not going to do anything besides email them one time. And they also said if you had something that's not visible damage, then they would not help you with that. So a primary rule is I have a no smoking policy in all the properties. No smoking of any shape or form, no smoking, no vaping, no weed, no marijuana, any of that type of stuff in the house, no smoking anything in the house. And I have a penalty if I catch somebody doing it inside the house, there's a penalty to pay. Well, this particular company is like, that's not a physical thing, and we're not gonna, we're not even gonna try to recoup that money. So after reading through their policies and procedures, I decided I would not work with that company anymore. It just was, I'm accepting all the risk. They're collecting money from me and not doing anything for me besides providing a booking link. So I decided it wasn't a very good setup. All right, so another thing to think about is maintenance costs, outdoor maintenance. When you have a longer term tenant, you can say, well, the tenant will take care of having the maintenance and we'll do cut the grass or trim the bushes back. You may have it inside of a community where that's taken care of for you, which is, also kind of a nice thing. Pets are a big consideration. You want to determine, do you want pets? Do you not want pets? You also need to make sure, if you're going to allow pets, look into, sometimes certain insurance companies will not allow you to have certain types of pets. They might say this breed is not allowed or that breed is not allowed. So you want to make sure what your insurance company actually says. If you're not positive about it, call your agent and talk to them. And while you're on it, talk to them about the difference of what your insurance cost is going to be. You're going to have a different rate. Sometimes your agent won't even take an STR. Other agents, they'll say, okay, well, for longer term rentals, we'll take a long term rental. Um, Give us your tenant's insurance policy. We'll give you a discount. Usually it's not much of a discount, but they'll give you a little bit of discount. So basically, I think for one of my properties, basically to remove the personal property liability and save me $10 a year. But at the same time, it probably wouldn't have covered their stuff anyway. And so it's a good idea for your long-term tenant to have insurance policy. I always recommend that. So we talked about maintenance and taking care of marketing. So marketing's a little bit easier on a longer term lease, and you'll usually get people if you let them if it's if you let the tenants have pets, and a lot of times they'll stay longer. So that's one of the reasons why I do like it. But of course, there's more wear and tear. Uh, be aware that there will be wear and tear on the house and the property. So when you do an STR, if that property is not occupied as much. So say like one of my properties seems like it gets booked primarily on weekends. A lot of times weekdays, there's nobody there. And in a sense, that's kind of great because it's a little bit less wear and tear. But there's a wear and tear of people coming in and out, and they're coming to stay, and then they take their stuff and they come to stay and they go and they stay. Um, and it's easy to miss something, something's missing or something's not aware, especially if you have a short time frame to switch it over. So you do have the wear and tear of people coming and going as opposed to a house where it's occupied all the time and the wear and tear there. Um, be aware of that. When you're either way, normal wear and tear is just normal wear and tear on the property, normal use. And you cannot get reimbursed for the cost of some of the normal use of the property, such as the useful life of a carpet is 10 years theoretically. Therefore, if someone were to damage or tear up your carpet, one of the first things you're going to have to figure out is, well, how old is the carpet? And then so how long has it been there? So how close are you to the end of useful life? And that's the value of it. If the carpet's been there for more than 10 years, the judge might not give you anything for it. If you say you take the person to court, worst case scenario, they damage the carpet, they don't pay, you take them to court, judge is going to say, well, how long has the carpet been in there? How much what's the value of the carpet? Well, this is how much I'll give you for that carpet. So if you're gonna, and my rule is whenever possible, always avoid court, just because you lose the ability to have the outcome that you want. You can always negotiate an outcome. It might not be exactly what you want, but you have a better chance. So use court as a last case scenario. Usually, I primarily just use court for evictions. If someone hasn't paid, that's the only way to get somebody out. And fortunately, I haven't had to do that for several years. That's great. Let's see other benefits either way. So for longer term rental, it does help a little bit to community stability. Um, that's what a lot of people feel and like about it. I mean, I guess that's more stable than say short term rental for the community. Um, I generally find that most tenants are not really invested in the community, so I don't really see a whole lot of that as far as that goes. Stability goes. Um, and again, it is less marketing, um, less marketing. Tenant screening, I think I mentioned that already. Kind of talked about that. For tenant screening, like I said, the SCRs do the tenant screening when I have a property that I'm managing that comes to vacant and we open it up for rental. I do a thorough background check and do thorough tenant screening to make sure that I'm trying to get the best person possible. For one thing is that I make everyone have kind of the same standards. If you've had an eviction within the last 8 years, there's no point in even applying to one of the properties I manage. I'm not going to approve you, because I don't want to put you in a property you have to be evicted for. Um, Income is going to be an issue. You want to make sure your debt to income ratio so that you can afford the property. And what is their credit history? Admittedly, I'm a little bit more lax when it comes to people who have medical bills. Um, some people say, well, they should have insurance, but I've seen people have medical bills even when they had insurance. I know I've had high medical bills when I've had insurance. Uh, so that's just something to think about and consider for a property. Let's see. Anything else I'm trying to think of that might well, I guess one of the things it really comes down to is consistency. So when you have a long-term person, you might not get the big money. A primary example is in one of my communities, one of the areas that I service. There's a couple of events throughout the year that if you have an STR, you can really get really big money for that month, for a couple of days. Which is great, but that offsets. You might have 2 or 3 months that you don't have anything at all, and so one big month versus 3 empty months. Longer term people, it's a stable income. You know what you're going to get month after month. You kind of get to know the people a little bit more. You kind of you can make sure you have decent people and can kind of keep up with them. With shorter term, with SCRs, the benefit there is, especially if the person's not a good person now. Again, the software companies, the websites usually screen them, and they don't do a great job, but they pretty much screen them, and most people find they're actually pretty decent anyway. But let's say you get a horrible person in there, well, they're only there for a few days, and so hopefully they can't do too much damage to the property in a few days. So that's the basics of it. Again, the very first thing I want you to do is, if you're considering it, you want to talk to an accounting person, make sure what the financial benefits of that are. Um, Talk to them first. The second thing is, depending on the area you want to be in, talk to your city, county administrators and find out what the rules and regulations are, and also see if there's a community association and what are the rules and regulations of that community association. If it's a condo building, that might be a hard no. So you want to make sure what the rules and regulations are. Sometimes at the lake, like I said, mentioned before, they only allow longer term rentals. Some buildings I've seen require a minimum of a 30-day or 90-day stay. So that's the groundwork. You want to make sure before you spend any time really looking at the property, that's the part to look at. The third step is, and maybe that's actually really is the first step, but the one of the important steps is looking at the financing part of it. It's a little bit harder to finance a property you're not going to live in, especially if you don't already have experience as a property manager or as rental income. Once you have 2 years of rental income, then you can actually count that on your taxes and they can count that towards your debt to income ratio. And makes it harder for you to buy additional properties. I'm sorry, it makes it easier for you to buy additional properties. If you don't have that 2 years of rental income, then your lender is not going to count that for the first 2 years. Um, so it's hard to get pre-approved. There are ways around it. There's ways to get loans. There's all kinds of different ways to, but for general, if you want to go out and say, hey, I want to invest in real estate, I want to buy my first rental property, that's you want to talk to a lender about that first and see what the options are and see what the ways around it. Is your debt to income ratio so that you can do this or do it that way, or do you have to find a way around it, like get a loan from a home, a HELOC loan or something else to kind of get you the money together. Sometimes you can even find other people who do loans for you. It's like hard money loans, some other things that way. I'm not real big on those, just because I'm not real big on paying interest. I mean, a mortgage, you get the tax deduction, and a mortgage is just a vehicle. Yeah, if you're making money on the property, then then take out a mortgage. And that actually gets one other thing I'm going to add in here is what is the purpose for the having a rental? What is your ultimate goal, the end game? Um, are you looking at getting increasing cash flow? So if you're doing that, if you're looking at just increasing cash flow, then obviously that property has to rent for more than the mortgage. So you want to make sure how much the mortgage is worth and how much you can rent the property for, and that you can rent the property. If you do an STR on when you have this mortgage, do you have enough in reserves to kind of cover in case you have a short month or a low month? The other thing sometimes people look at is long-term appreciation. How is that property going to, what is the value of that property going to be in say 3 to 5, 7, 10 years? Can you just have the property pay for itself for the next 10 years, and then you have the appreciation of the value of the property? And this is something that you really need to talk to your accountant with and form a strategy. And once you do that, then we talk to the mortgage person and we get a mortgage score. And then we start looking at areas, and that's when we start talking to counties and making sure counties, neighborhoods, and cities, making sure what's allowed in that community, in that particular house. Hey, I'm interested in this property here. What can I do this? Can I do that? Can I have it as a short-term rental? Can I divide it up? Can I make it two separate units? I've seen some people do some great jobs where they have a communal kitchen and they'll have individual bedrooms, kind of like the old-fashioned Airbnb, old-fashioned bed and breakfasts, where they have an individual bedrooms and have their own bathroom on there. And then the people can come out in the communal area and have breakfast or dinner, but they have their own room that they can lock the doors and keep the rest of the world out. So anyway, my name is Scott Fogleman. I'm a real estate agent. I'm a property manager. I sell real estate through EXP Realty. I also have a separate property management company called Peaks Properties. So whenever I'm dealing with rental properties, as far as managing rental properties, that strictly goes to Peaks Properties. I'm a broker for that, the principal broker for that. I'm the sole broker for that company, and I run that completely outside of EXP or anything else. Um, if you're looking to buy or sell real estate, then I can definitely help you with, through my EXP license, and help you get those. And again, if you're looking to invest, I'd love to help you with that. Scott Fogleman, EXP Realty Peaks Properties, 434-941-8847. And I hope you have a great day.